Wow, welcome back to the Scale Down live stream where we dive into all aspects about downsizing, aging, and everything in between. I'm your host, Natalie Lewin of Lux Transitions, and I specialize in helping adults 65 plus scale down to their next chapter. And each week we bring you expert insights, personal stories, and practical advice to help you navigate these important life transitions. Wow, it's been a minute and I've missed you guys and I'm really excited to be back and I'm excited to be speaking to our special guest Arlene Williams of Bonafide Organizing. Arlene is an expert in helping people declutter and streamline their lives, making her an incredible resource for anyone looking to scale down, and me as well. So, whether you're planning a move, preparing to downsize, or just ready to make the most of your space, Arlene has the insights and strategies to help you make it happen. We're going to dive into her topics and some real life success stories. So let's get right into it. Welcome, Arlene. So grateful to have you here with us. How are things going?
Things are going good. Can't complain. I am well and healthy, and yes, life is good. So yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
No problem. And what more do we need other than being well and happy? I love that.
Exactly. Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get to here, starting to organize and help people declutter and live their best lives in their space that they have?
Ooh, okay. That journey was something that just kind of happened. It was definitely unplanned. I had been an architectural rep. I was promoting interior finishes for certain brands. And there was just a slowdown in the economy at the time. So that we're going back now a little bit more than 10 years ago. And I was just left with, what do I do with myself? And I sort of tapped into, okay, well, what are you good at? I was accustomed to being pretty organized with regards to setups for meetings and presentations. I had a whole lot of samples that I had to travel with in my vehicle. So just having my vehicle full of organized samples, it's just one of those things that kind of went with the job. And I thought, you know what, maybe this is time that I actually do something, because I ended up being laid off.
Right.
And I thought, okay, do I jump back into the industry, which I did have like a second opportunity. And I thought, no, maybe the signs are telling me that I need to get into something different. And I've always enjoyed helping other people. I mean, that was my role in a sense. And it just kind of felt like it was an organic transition to do organizing. I've been watching all the shows for so many of my parts of my life. And it just kind of, just the light bulb it just clicked. And I ended up checking out Professional Organizers in Canada. And I thought, oh, organization, maybe that's something that I can kind of get into. And next thing I know, I'm in it. I'm all in. And honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect other than helping other people declutter their homes. I found that it also gave me back. And as much as I was giving them peace, it made me feel that this was something that I took away, like in terms of feeling this sense of connectivity and a sense of that, wow, I'm really impacting someone's lives. And it kind of helped to transform me as well. It kind of puts me in a position to say, what are some things that could also affect my life and change what I do? So it was kind of pretty much a discovery of myself, learning through also my clients. And I love it. I really love that exchange.
It's great though when we can also learn through our work and
Mhm.
also through other people.
Oh, yes, 100%. That's something that's definitely taught me that I was surprised about. It's like, oh, I'm going in to help you. It's all about you, but I didn't know how much it was going to give back to me as well.
Right,
So,
right.
mhm.
The beauty of life.
I tell you.
So let me ask you. So, I help older adults to downsize. And, this is one of the things that get people stuck and not being able to make a transition or even think about what a transition would look like because they're just so overwhelmed with, I need to declutter. What do I take? What do I leave? So, what are the first steps you recommend for, let's say, a senior considering to downsize?
Well, that's the first thing is that if you are considering to downsize, start now. Don't put it off at the point where, you have to come in and assess the space and make the recommendations to put the house up for sale. Start now. If that's something that you're thinking of doing at some point in your life, start now. Today is the best day to start rather than putting it off for tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. Because as with life, we just never know what may happen tomorrow that we can't get a chance to start the decluttering process. And
Right.
that is life. It's always the unexpected things that happen. So do as much as you can now. And then this way, you're not feeling as overwhelmed or as pressured
Right.
to, make those decisions as to what needs to let go because you're now downsizing to a smaller home.
Right. Right. Little by little. That's
Little
how
by
the
little.
elephant how that's how we eat the elephant.
Exactly. One bite size at a time,
Yeah.
chunks at a time, just small chunks of it. Start in one area that's less overwhelming.
Right.
Maybe it happens to be a drawer or a chest, but just start somewhere small that it just doesn't seem as overwhelming.
Yes. It's funny because we all get overwhelmed.
Oh
And
yeah.
so when I'm getting overwhelmed and I don't even feel like moving, I'm like, just keep moving. It doesn't matter what the pace is, just keep moving. Don't stop.
Yeah.
It will get better and
Yeah.
easier if you
Yes.
if you just keep going.
Yes. Yes. That is the motivation. I think that's you freeze when you think about, oh my gosh, okay, I got to do this thing, I got to declutter, and then it's like I don't know, what I should do, and then you just kind of freeze and then retreat.
Right.
Um, but if you think of, there's got to be at least one thing that when you start to look at and examine and say, okay, I actually don't need this any longer in my life, and you let that thing go, typically it's the motivation that you need to keep on going. So you're
Right.
right. Just do it anyways. Just start anyways. Do it afraid. I mean, that's always been that sort of mantra, but it's kind of like that. It's scary. We've lived with so many things for so long. And the
Right.
hardest thing is to say, okay, I've become accustomed to seeing that all this time, but how has it really served you?
Right.
And I know that there's a lot of things that have meaning, sentimental value, but this is the opportunity, especially if you're thinking of downsizing, to really examine those items around you, those belongings, and say, take a really hard look at them and say, was it really that meaningful, or was it just easier to keep it than let it go?
Yes, that's a good question to ask yourself. I love that one. Because usually you'll find a lot of them don't carry that much meaning.
Not usually.
No.
Not usually. No.
Small percentage of those items that will really have some deep sentimental value.
Exactly. I think and again, I think it's more so the overwhelm, the thought of looking at all these items, and then truly needing to make a decision. And then that is, I think, what freezes everyone, what makes everyone, just retreat and stop and say, I don't think I can do this, because
Right.
it's just too hard. It's you're getting inside your head, and I think that's where you kind of have to, take a step back, and then yes, once you start to touch and observe some things, I think that's the reality will sink in that I had not even seen this in so long. In fact, I've forgotten about it, but now that I actually have to go through things, if I hadn't thought about it in all these years, if it hadn't been useful, maybe it is time to just, release it.
Yes. Release. Yes.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, how can a professional organizer assist with the emotional aspects of letting go and long held possessions?
Yes. So this is one of those areas that it does take time. I mean, I as a professional organizer, I can't tell someone what they need to do, what they should do about their belongings. But the questions really is, as I've stated before, is when you hold this thing, what joy does it really spark? I mean, sometimes things are just, they're beyond repair in many cases. And so the reality check is, instead of saying to yourself that maybe one day it could be useful, think of it in the present moment. How useful is it to you, like right now?
Right.
When was the last time that you used it? And if you can't think of a time when, then that's a question that you've just answered for yourself. Like, maybe it is time to depart with it. I would also say this too, that because, if you're giving yourself that amount of time, sometimes there are things that you're conflicted about, especially if it's in good condition, it's not useful, but there is a memory attached to it, good or bad, because sometimes we are holding on to things that not necessarily have great memories, but nonetheless, you're maybe unsure about it. Rest that aside to think about it, and then go back to the things that are easier to move through. So, if it's like a shoe that's beyond repair and you're not going to be repairing the shoe, then get rid of it. Like, start with the easier things. And that's kind of where I would lean into, is start with anything that you look at that is easier to get rid of. Something that is torn, something that you're not going to repair, something that doesn't fit you anymore, that doesn't even look good. You don't feel good in it anymore.
Right.
Start to let those things go. And then once you start to get through those things, then you come back to the things that are sentimental. And the easiest, or maybe not the easiest, but the questions that I would probably ask again is, how much joy does that give you? And is it if it really does have great joy, but it's too large of an item to take with you, maybe this is where we want to take some pictures of this particular item,
Right.
And then create sort of a memory book of these items. That is sort of, the long and short of how to go through these things. And it is quite kind of a hand holding, because sometimes people have a story to tell behind each one of their belongings. So, again, you have to kind of look at it. How does it serve you? And it's a real honest look deep inside, not just the belonging itself, but how much is it of value, and how much is it serving you in your life today?
Right. Okay. Perfect. I like that you touched on the hand-holding part, because I think that a lot of this is hand-holding. It doesn't get done immediately just because somebody's there. Yep, we're going to get through this quickly. No, there's emotional, I wouldn't say baggage, but there's emotional connections.
Yes.
And how does one let go? And it's good to have somebody supporting you in that decision. Should it be something that you let go, or should it be something that I'm holding on to?
Yes. And a lot of times, some of those items that we are holding on to is also out of guilt. Someone provided us with this piece of item, and you feel guilty about letting it go. So most of the treasures that we have in our homes are things that someone gave you: mom, auntie, uncle, sister, brother, your kids. That's the other thing too. It's like our kids give us these things. And we had a hard time departing with them because it was the first of something. Oh my God, it was their first, the first tooth that fell out. Their umbilical cord, or their report card that came home. And over the years, none of that was leaving, and somehow it became a collection.
Right.
And so now it's like it just became part of you, where none of that stuff is really you. None of those possessions is you. You're completely different than your stuff. So your clutter is not you. It's not attached to you. You can make choices in which to let go, and get rid of the guilt too when you do depart with it. It served you yesterday. You enjoyed looking at it. And maybe, again, if it's something that you really need to keep, hold on to the memory instead of the thing, and take a picture of it if you really feel inclined to do so. Half the time, no one's taking, not enough pictures are being taken of everything. Right. So again, it's allowing yourself to go at a pace that feels comfortable. And you're right that sometimes someone else being there as a professional organizer, someone else being there can help to get through to the next step in which you're making the decision that I can actually let this go. And it is so freeing when you finally do. It seems impossible in the beginning, but I can tell you that once you start and get through to the other side, that it feels so freeing and so rewarding.
I had to chuckle when you said keeping the first tooth. I've gone through things and seen tooth. Why do I need that? What am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
We don't need it.
Yes.
I'm not making a bracelet or a necklace. It's not the pendant. My kid doesn't want it.
That's the other thing. Your kid doesn't want it. We're keeping things because we think our kids are going to want it someday as well.
Right.
So do yourselves a favor. I mean, great for you, Mom. You're like, my kid's not going to want this. You probably make that decision for her.
Right.
Like, she's not going to want this. And the kids don't want it half the time.
No.
So if you think that you're doing a good thing by holding on to all these things for your kids, if they're old enough, give it to them now and see if they want it. Maybe they don't. And that's the other thing that you've got to face as well. They may not want all that stuff. So then why are you holding on to it?
Yes. This is segue into something else, but, back in days gone, people wanted to inherit furniture, and they're going to pass it down to family members, their heirlooms, their antiques. And today's day, nobody wants them. Nobody has the space for them. They don't want them. And they're not guilty about saying, I don't want this stuff. And like I'm finding with clients that do think that, this is antique furniture. We want to sell it. Nobody's taking it because you call the shops, they're filled to the brim because they're getting furniture in and other antiques, but nobody's buying them. We're in a different generation, different time. And so what's important and sentimental, those values have also changed. But it's really passing those new thoughts onto our older population to gently let them know that sometimes like people just don't want your stuff that was precious to you. It's not valued in the same light as it was.
Exactly. Oh wow, you said it. It's I think also part of that is the things that, parents or grandparents are holding on to, for their children that may be of some sentimental value. If you think back to, there were some living room sets that you couldn't step into. It was not being used, right? You only looked at it, but you dare not enter that room. And maybe, just maybe, it might be used when company came over.
Right. Maybe.
Right? If you can get past the ropes. But so that's the thing is now I find that this generation, we're using our things.
Yeah.
and we want it to be comfort other than just, for the looks.
Right.
And yes, those things may not be as precious to us as, our parents and grandparents. So I think that things that are, were that precious or hand me down, there might be maybe one or a few things that might be kept because it resonates with the next generation. But otherwise, again, unless they want it now, the best thing is to then see if it does have value, see if it can be sold, Facebook Marketplace, or like an auction, an online auction. But otherwise, being okay with, if they don't want it, it may just have to be, a donated item. And it's completely okay. And the kids shouldn't feel guilty for not accepting it as well. So that's the other thing, is that we might be holding on to things out of guilt, but then we may in turn have the kids feel guilty if they don't want to take your items. And that's not really fair.
No.
Because you really don't want to pass that on to them as well either, that they're going to be stuck with stuff that they don't want to let go of. It should be cherished. So therefore the donating is great, or reselling is great, because at least you know that when someone wants your things, you know that it's going into a home that they actually will cherish it.
Yeah, agreed. How can seniors decide what to keep? Well, we actually already spoke about that. What are some common challenges seniors face when downsizing, and how do you help them overcome? So other than the piece that they're tied to their things, what else happens?
Well, in hindsight, they got to look at the space, the parameters that they're moving into. Right. Knowing that you cannot take a lot of that stuff with you. So the reality again is being faced with, what are the things that that bring you joy? Because the thing about, even though you're letting go a lot of things, which seems to be scary, you are taking some things with you as well. Maybe a lot of things, depending on the space of the home that you're going to. But this gives you the opportunity to take anything out that might even be stored away, and have a really good look at these items to determine, this is the next chapter in my life, and how best can I, fulfill this next chapter with joy, with positivity, without looking back, and looking back on those memories. This is something new in life that you have a chance to, sort of like a rebirth, a refreshing moment in your life, where the opportunity to downsize brings you with much joy and more freedom than having, having the overwhelm of even carrying a larger home, and the burdens that come with having a larger space. Yeah. So thinking about how freeing this would be, this next chapter, and freeing yourself of those items is what you really need to focus on more. So yes, you're taking things, you're going to take things with you. It isn't decluttering, isn't just about getting rid of the things. You probably could also bring new things into your life that make sense for you in this next chapter. So never think of it like that. Think of it as just sort of shedding the layers of things that, again, are not serving you at this current moment, but you do get to take the things with you that you do love and enjoy. And there's going to be some things that you appreciate more than the rest of the stuff. And then that should be the focus. What really makes my heart sing? What really gives me the most satisfaction and joy by having this thing? So you're going to think, well, I need my furniture. You're going to need, maybe it's lighting, maybe it's some decor and whatnot, but maybe it's a fresh start for some new things. Maybe it's some new furniture. So,
revive the energy.
Yes, you're getting rid of the old or the past, and then you're bringing in something new. And you do get to take some of those things that you hold precious with you.
Right.
But those things are going to be more precious to you than others.
Right.
So that's the focus, is what brings more joy to you than some of the other stuff. Because it really is, baggage is probably the best word for it. It's belongings, but you are sometimes bringing that baggage with you that is holding you back, and you don't want to do that. You want to lighten the load so that it moves you forward into sort of a refreshing and new space, new life, new
Got
chapter.
it.
Yeah.
New chapter. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
seeing as people are downsizing and going to smaller spaces, and usually that's also part of the overwhelm. They're used to their space. How are they going to operate in a new, smaller space? Can you share some tips for organizing and maximizing space in smaller living environments?
Yes. So here's the thing too, that I'm going to touch on real quick about the clutter, is that the bigger home just meant that it held more items that you weren't using.
Right.
So now we're going to be more intentional with the things that we are using in the smaller home. So to have it more spacious or feel more spacious, this is why we need to declutter. So we're not having the things that are completely useless in our lives just hanging around and occupying space. So in a smaller home, we do want to ensure that we are having the right scaled furniture,
Okay.
based on our needs and depending on how you plan to entertain, but also look at the vertical spaces. And I'm talking vertical spaces on the walls, inside cabinets, because you may not have as much cabinet space in the kitchen per se, but there are vertical organizers that you can put on the insides of cabinet doors or on walls, maybe even behind doors, that will optimize the space for you. Anything that that you can easily reach at, which generally can be some wall space, that will make things that will be able to optimize space a lot better for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So how do you ensure that important documents and sentimental items are safely organized during a move?
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, so paperwork is definitely part of that decluttering process. Um, getting it all paper sorted. So what we want to make sure of is any of the documents that really aren't relevant today, that are dated, that have, there's probably a bunch of paper, receipts and things that have been way past the warranty period. Those are the type of things that you want to look at recycling and shredding. You definitely want to make sure, of course, some of the important documents. So if you focus on what are the critical documents that I need to take with me, to make sure that I have space for that, whatever that looks like. Maybe it's a filing cabinet, a 2-drawer filing cabinet rather. But once you condense all that paperwork, now you can actually see what it is that you need to store it in. But yes, decluttering that paperwork is definitely crucial, because again, over the years, instead of looking at that paper and deciding whether or not it needs to be kept, we just maybe put it aside or store it in a box and it's not being looked at. So part of the decluttering is definitely attacking that paper. And we only want to keep those important documents like, well, anything that's tax related for the past, 5 to 7 years, I think it is 7 years, that you want to hold on to, that is relevant to that return. If it's not, and it's way beyond that, then get it shredded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what advice do you have for seniors looking to maintain an organized home after they've downsized?
It's 1 o'clock.
Yes. So maintaining is something that is definitely necessary. Systems don't work by themselves.
Right.
So once your home is organized, if you take something out, you need to put it back. it just becomes routine. And just the same way how you might have a weekly, grocery shopping routine, it's the same thing as sort of maintaining the organization systems that are put in place.
Right.
So, if you have a certain amount of mugs in the cabinet and the cabinet is full, in order to keep that maintained because you just went, on a vacation and saw this wonderful quirky mug that you now want to bring home, you got to think about what needs to leave before you bring that in. And it's the same thing even with your clothing. So kind of think of a one in, one out rule to maintain the organized space as well. So if your clothes, your closet is at a maximum and you really want to bring something in, look at what's in your clothing closet or in your closet right now to see what clothes need to be removed before you bring something else in.
Right. Good advice. Good practical advice. Well, thank you. We're going to wrap up, but before we do, I like to have ask 3 rapid fire questions. So, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Beach or mountain?
Mountain.
Coffee or tea?
Tea. Love the smell of coffee, but I enjoy tea.
Oh, me too. I love the smell of coffee, but I'm a tea girl. So it was a pleasure speaking with you, Arlene. Your knowledge and insights have been truly helpful, and I know that your advice has been helpful for our audience. So before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or advice you'd like to share before you head out?
Yeah, so I'm going to say this. One drawer, one space, one day at a time. Just take the small steps, but just do it anyways. Because the sooner you start, the better off you and your space is going to be in the end, especially when you're going to a new space. So just start, but just start small and do it now.
Love that. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And to everyone watching, we appreciate your time and engagement. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you next time.